I'm Terri Murphy with the Women's Wisdom Network and Smart Women, Smarter Choices. And can you believe when you're BFFs with somebody who turns out to be the other part of what I think women need? Krisstina Wise is joining us. Say hello, Krisstina.
Hello, hello.
And she is the real estate mogul, millionaire coach, and creator of several multi-million-dollar businesses, including Good Life Luxury, Paperless Agent, just to name a few. And she's here with, I think, the Sovereignty Academy, which is where we kind of reconnected, is one of the best places to do that because our goal is the same, which is to help women have better lives. And you certainly went through a ton of, I'll say, adventures to get here, and so did I. And we met way back, way back. And because, I mean, you've been featured all over the place, USA Today, Apple loves you, Evernote loves you, everybody loves you. And you've helped, how many women do you think you've just helped get wealthy and wealthy?
Oh, I mean, thousands at this point, many thousands. So I just remember, Terry, I want to tell the story. I think I mentioned it to you. You and I have just circled back around, and I was just so excited to get this opportunity to reconnect with you. But I remember back, it was at Keller before anybody knew who Keller Williams was. We would have our annual conferences in Las Vegas, which maybe there were 300 of us at the time, but we'd go to Las Vegas. I remember it's in the Paris hotel at this dungeon down at this, wherever we could afford these little bitty conferences. And you taught this class on technology and the internet and where things were going. And this before anybody had a website. And I was so just enamored with you. You're just beautiful and brilliant and
So
leading the industry and just a whippersnapper. And you inspired me so much. And I just want to say that you're really, as a woman, like you were such a leader that inspired me. Like, I want to be her. I want to do that. This is what's possible.
Isn't that great? Because I always wanted to be blonde and wealthy. And so this works out just great. You know, it's so interesting because we all have our competencies, and you are spectacular in the financial part. And I've been really blessed to have gone through your Sovereignty Academy, which is unbelievably detailed. And your secondary part, which is Macy Anderson, is phenomenal. By the way, you made her; she's your daughter. And so the reason for bringing this series together for Krisstina and I was, imagine combining the experiential, relational, and intellectual capital of two women in totally separate fields, yet aligned, that could help other women. We're going to bring this to you through our channels. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so looking forward to having these conversations.
Oh yeah, and it's a conversation today we just thought we'd open this up with, and this is so interesting because I just ran a survey on my social media, my social media platforms. And I said, if you have a challenge in business today, what would be the number one? And everybody's like, time, energy, resources, managing time, working all the time, not making enough money, everything that you talk about in Sovereignty Academy, and that I bring up in Smart Women, Smarter Choices, the Women's Wisdom Network 8-week series. And the one we talked about is why making more money is keeping you broke. And you've been there, done that. And so I thought we'd talk a little bit about the wealth and the well-being part of how you balance that, because working harder isn't always the smartest thing, but working smarter is. And I think that's what you speak to in Sovereignty Academy. What would you say to that when people say to you, why am I broke and I'm working like a wild woman?
Yeah, I'll answer that. And just real quick too, like, why is Sovereignty Academy as far as a name? And there's meaning behind that. And my bigger brand is Wealthy Wealthy, but Sovereignty Academy is the money and business school, but it's around the word sovereignty, which try to spell that one, right? Like, it's the name of my brand. I still can't spell the damn thing.
I got to tell you,
I still do a spell check. Yeah.
Spell check kicks in.
Yeah. But the point is that I really named it that so we as women can, like, a true value or aspiration is really the sense of sovereignty, the sense of independence, the sense of clarity, the sense of security, the sense of power, as women on our own, like as women in our businesses and our lives, like, just to hold that sovereign power in a way. And So that's like fundamentally that's what that's about. And money in business is a big part of sovereignty. So financial sovereignty means reaching a place where we have time because we have money, and money buys time is ultimately how that all winds up. And to your point, the reason why we named it this is because especially, women, we work a lot, we're really good at churning and burning and multitasking and holding 10,000 plates in the air and all different kind of business concerns and family concerns. And, we've all done that. But with what happens is we've been taught through culture, family, that it's given us this subconscious belief that the way to get to that place where I have more time, i.e., more freedom, is I need to work harder. If as long as I work harder, working harder and more money means more freedom. And it's absolutely not true. The harder we work, the harder we get stuck in the grind, the more we're chasing the money. If we're chasing the money, we're always chasing it. And so the truth is, the more money we make usually causes more problems. And big part of that is means less time. So we just have to bust this myth that more like working harder does not mean more money, and more money does not mean more freedom.
Boy, that is such a brilliant point to make, and I'll tell you why. So, I've done over 237 interviews with women in their business and their personal lives, and we think like, just buckle up, buttercup, just do it more, do it harder, get another job. And again, you say chasing the money instead of having the money work for you, which is something the Sovereignty Academy really helps with. But more importantly, it starts with the belief system. And the belief system is, if I just work harder, which means you have to give up. I mean, if you think about it, if there's only 8 cups in the coffee pot, there's only 8 cups, right? And if you're spending them all over here, there's nothing left. And we don't realize that that there are options outside of ourselves because we look at the money factor. And I just did a session with a woman yesterday who literally made $28,000 in a sales transaction, and then was all excited about making $437 in a retail for a few hours, and not realizing that she's bifurcating her time, picking up donuts and dropping off this. And when she could delegate that and empower someone else to feed their family and concentrate on the money-making activities. And that's when I think we get envious or victimized by women who look good, who are in great shape. We go, oh, I'd love to, but I don't have time to exercise, or I don't have time to get my hair done, or whatever it is, to make you feel good, because it's really an inside job. Don't you agree?
It's not an inside job, but money is actually knowledge based. And so when we don't understand how the fundamentals of money operate, it keeps us in this place of chasing the dollar. So I have to, and the only way to make more money, if we're not happy with the if we're not happy with the amount of money we're making in the game of chasing the money, the only way to make more of it is to churn more hours and work harder to create more. And that's the trap. And that can go on forever.
Well,
But what we're not taught is that we don't earn our way to wealth. We don't earn our way to the sovereignty. It's how we spend our money that matters. And so when we get out of everything about working harder and more money was the answer to all my money problems, when we really start to learn and start to be very conscious of our money and understand our money, and as women want to learn and want to be very knowledgeable with this thing called money, then all of a sudden now we're the one that is, waving the wand. We're the one that's controlling, managing, moving, growing, talking about this money thing. But the only conversation we're having about money is, what are you doing to generate more leads? Or what are you doing to more make money? Or what are you doing to make more sales? Or what are you doing to generate more revenue? We're not talking about, what are you doing to create more wealth and freedom?
boy, that is such a great distinction. And, may I use you as an example of working harder, 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 harder? And you said that can go on forever. And guess what? It didn't go on forever for you. It almost ended forever, because you were working so hard that you literally almost worked yourself to death, which speaks greatly, by the way, to your tenacity and your grit. but I think grit's only good if you can see the end, and but working harder, like you said, is just for everything, and you get used to that, and then you settle. And you're saying that really paying attention can change everything about your belief with money, your creation of money, and then your ability to make money for you. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, there's only two types of income fundamentally. There's working income and non-working income. And working income is what we're working for, obviously. And the game of money, when we want to win the money game, which means that the money from passive income or asset income pays for the cost of our lifestyle, so our hard work no longer has to. That's when we know we won the money game. And so part of the journey of money is, yeah, to work hard, especially when you're younger, but you reach an age where you just don't want to work that hard anymore. I mean, or you even can't. But the point is that during these really good working years, or even times like now when money, especially in the real estate industry, has been really hot and high, it's making sure we just don't expand and increase the cost of our lifestyle because money's good. It's like now's the time to be smart with our money so that now that maybe I have a surplus or more than I normally have had historically, let's use that surplus not necessarily to increase how much money I spend on a monthly basis to buy a higher, more expensive lifestyle. But can I do to start what I call the conversion process? We all know like conversions, how to convert from, a lead to a sale or something. Well, money has conversions. We want to convert income to wealth. And what that means in that conversion process is versus just selling real estate, maybe we're buying it. For the sake of buying it over time, however, whatever assets we buy. So at some point, we didn't spend all of our money on our lifestyle. We spent a portion of it to buy these assets then that throw off enough cash flow that we can quote unquote retire or whatever the word is, fill in the blank. So that's what we want to do over time, but the only way we know how to do that, or we can do that, is what I call our relationship with money. And just because historically we've not been in control of money for too long. It's less than 100 years that we've even been able to own a checkbook. We could even own our own assets. My mother, the only way she could survive really was through marriage, right? So my generation as a Gen X, I looked at my mother go from man to man to man to try to pay the bills because that was only her way to be able to have money, right? Was through a man. So that's just one generation. And then she started working to do some things later on, but her mother couldn't work. So you think this is how close we are to this, to we as women and being able to like we make just as much money as men these days. We can and we do. And we're coming into a lot of inheritance. Women are getting to situations where we're going to have a lot of control of money. Yet at the same time, we're afraid of it. We don't have a healthy relationship with it. We don't study it. We abdicate it to the planners or to the husbands or to the uncles. Like we're still kind of, even though we're in control of a lot of it, we're not gaining the confidence to know what to do with it so we can turn that money into grow more money. And women tend to be afraid, like if I get all this money, I'm probably going to lose it. So let me go give it to an advisor or somebody that's not going to lose it for me. So that's what I'm just saying. We want to have this conversation so that we as women can become financially sovereign and we can start having these money conversations and be very confident and comfortable with knowing what to do with our money.
That's such a good point, because I just recently did something for the Data Advocate, an article on women and investing. $19 trillion is what women control in the economy, especially after a certain age group. But if I'm listening to you and you're saying, well, what if I do get this money? I'm just going to mess it up. So I'm just going to default to a planner or a state person or whatever. But it really, at the end of the day, you're telling me it's really not that hard to figure this out when you really do it. And tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, well, and just to tell a little story, like I've had, for me personally, I've had really two pivotal money crises, let's say, where it really radically changed my perspective on money. And one of those was early in my real estate career I was making a ton of money. I got into real estate, hard worker, loved it. and very quickly became one of the top salespeople in my town, which was Austin at the time, and just made a ton of money. I mean, I made more money in a year than my parents would in a lifetime, many times over, right? And so, and I grew up very, and even though it doesn't really matter how I grew up, I mean, I grew up, I started in a trailer home. So that just shows kind of the, where I
Regression.
started, yeah,
Yeah.
the progression of that, which was cool. But even I don't even think it matters that I grew, that's where I started. What I did is I fell into the cultural trap that I was making all this money, but especially based on a poor kid, I was buying this whole lifestyle that I could never afford as a kid, right? So what did I do when I started coming into this money? Oh, well, I was buying the cars and the boats and the clothing and the shoes and the bags and then the next car and the private schools and making all this money. I just felt like it could never run out. But that wasn't even the point. The point is that I was the money maker. I made a lot of money, especially 20 plus years ago, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. But I made it and I didn't ever want to look at it. I just passed it to my husband at the time and just put it in the bank, gave the checks to him. He did it. And I just would, because my belief was if I just go make a lot of money, the money will never run out. And if we have a money problem, I'll just work harder because I'm really great at making money. So that's my mindset. And then the clock goes forward, and all of a sudden, found myself divorced and fighting over all those stupid assets. And now I'm a single mom, and I have no money. I lost my income because I've been basically fighting over this damn divorce, and then I didn't have any income because because I was fighting over the divorce. But also we had credit cards and tax liens that I didn't even know about.
Oh,
And I was very like angry and resentful towards him for the longest time. Like, how could you do that to us and these different things? But then finally I was like, wait a second, sister. You just gave the money away. Like, you're responsible. You didn't want to look at it. You didn't ask about it. You guys never had a conversation about it. So how is it his fault? Maybe he was doing maybe he was doing something that wasn't a good thing, or maybe he was just as naive as you, but you were equally complicit in this situation, right? So that
taking.
was that big wake up call of, man, just because I made it, the question, but then I was abdicating it. I found myself in a horrific financial situation because I ignored it, even though I was damn good at making it. So that's kind of lesson number one. Lesson number two that came out of that experience was I had this question of how could I have made all of that money? I made well over $1 million in a few years, right? How can I make all that money and I'm dead broke
Broke.
and I cannot feed my children? I mean, this is embarrassing. I'm bankrupt. They're taking my car away. Like, I couldn't connect those dots, right? So it's at that moment in time where I just realized like there's got to be more to this money game than just being really good at making money, because I made a ton of it and this is no place I ever thought I would be. So that was my big wake up call when it came to money, and just realized, oh, and the kind of the third point in that whole story is that the more money I made, the more money problems, the more marriage problems we had. Again, because money wasn't a conversation and it just seemed to create more problems, arguing more over more things and more money. So is that another little thing is like, oh, I was thinking more money would solve more of my problems. And the truth is more money was creating more problems because money was a problem.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. When I did the 237 interviews with an industrial behavioral psychologist, these were behavioral interviews, so they were very pragmatic. And one of the biggest issues that we found, and it didn't make any difference, Krisstina, the age, but women did not have the conversation about money. And if you don't have the matching values there, that's where the conflict happens. I can't blame somebody who grew up with very little for not wanting to buy some shoes and stuff, because we've all done that. It's predominant, I think, usually in your earlier years when you start having control of your own money. But what if you spent a little bit of time learning how to manage that money so that you could have more of the life you want later? And it's not about a delayed gratification. It's about smart versus no attention. Can I say it that way without sounding degraded? Because, especially at a certain age, and let's just pick, you're just starting your career. If you're listening to this and you're, under 40, it's like, whoa, I've got all this energy. I've got all the stamina. I can do whatever. There's going to be the kinds of things you buy that are not the smartest, but you just never know when you're not going to have that stamina or the industry is going to change. I mean, imagine the transition in certain industries that just literally disappeared overnight. So what are you doing to have that security so that you never have to depend outside of yourself on sustenance and security for you and your family? And again, you just have to learn a couple of basics. What do you think is the number one basic besides a budget? Because clearly that's the first thing. I mean, people are like, oh, budget. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you've got people that know what they spent on pizza seasoning over here, and then you got people that have no idea what they made. And especially if you're in business, if you don't know what you're spending, then you can't tell if you're in the profit zone. As a coach, we want to know a P&L almost every month at least. Where are you? And what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I teach a concept. So in business, it's funny, a lot of people, entrepreneurs, real estate agents, or business owners love doing, maybe let's talk about where the business is going to come from and maybe know some conversions from leads to sales or whatever the case is. But you ask them you ask them to pull their profit and loss, and they don't want to do it. They're like, they'll send you to the bookkeeper. Let me get it from my bookkeeper. So I just venture to say that if you're not really good with your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your cash flow statement, you're not good with money. And there's money that's going to be lost all over the place, and you're just robbing yourself of this wealth creation. So that's what business is. Business is money, and you really understand those basic financials, and you don't abdicate them to a bookkeeper. Like, you can pull your own books. So that's a big piece. And then but all the money we make in our business now, what's left over is called profit. And so that profit's what we move to our household, and that's the money we pay ourselves as business owners. At the end of the day, everything's profit one way or another. So when we move that to our household, I teach the same concept. I don't teach budgeting. It's like a bad diet. Who wants to go on a low calorie diet? Nobody wants to go on a low calorie budget, right? But when you have a lifestyle spending plan, it's all about intention and direction and what you want to create for yourself tomorrow and today. Now it's a spending strategy and spending plan. Like, where do I get to spend all my money? What choices am I making that my money's going to go towards these different categories? And this profit and loss that I'm going to pull up through my household to make sure I'm funding all of my dreams. Part of that dream is my future self that's going to want to retire, whatever you call it, someday. I want to fund and have some cash in the bank and make sure I have my emergency fund and some other funds that, require cash. And I want to be able to fund this really great lifestyle that I want to pay for on a month-to-month basis. So we can do all of that, but we have to know, and I call that lifestyle architecture, is that how much does it cost to live this life that we live and how much we want? And then what's included in a good life, and what does security feel like? How much money in the bank would make us feel secure? And so it's just answering a lot of these very basic questions that people never ask. They just think, if I work hard or work harder, I'll have enough money. And as long as I have enough money, it'll all work out in the end. And it just doesn't work that way. Like, it's all very strategic. Our financials are strategic, and our wealth creation is strategic, just as our business strategy is strategic.
But you don't have to have a PhD to do this. I mean, you talk about
But
the
it's
whole
so simple.
yeah.
Right. It's so simple. Everybody that works with me or goes through my coaching, it's very rare that I don't hear this, Terry. You mean to tell me I've been ignoring and terrified of this money thing my entire life, one way or another, and it's this easy? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's the shame. It's this damn easy. But the whole rigged system out there makes us think that money's complex and we need all this help and all of this, that, and the other to be able to you do well with our money. And it's a big fat lie. Like, money is really easy. Maybe if we're playing on Wall Street and that's the game we're playing in, or the level we're playing. But for the rest of us, for us to have enough money for our own lives, to fulfill our own futures and maybe have a legacy, it's super easy.
Yeah, and that you had mentioned something when you talked about that high income would make you rich. I think that a lot of people think, well, if I just make $100,000 more a year, I'll be rich. And yeah, it's definitely going to pay off some of the issues now. But what you're saying is, when you have this strategic plan, it's not about depriving yourself, but it's about appropriating certain amounts of money to certain levels of your life. So I mean, you talked about that you believe that achievement and attainment would make you happy, and that you could trade your health for wealth. And clearly I mean, how many people in older age groups do you see that are wealthy beyond means, but they have no health? And so they can't do anything with it. I mean, it's tragic what we see, especially in this country, as we live longer. Now, women are inheriting a lot of money through, estates and whatever. And you're right, they've never taken the time to really figure out what it really costs or where the money's going. Another issue I see a lot with as a master coach is that there are recurring costs that are not necessary, they're not aware of, whether it's an account or this or that, and you start adding up $80, $90 a month. Let's just say it's 100 because I'm not good at fractions. Times 12, that's $1,200. Well, $1,200, that adds up a lot after 10 years. I mean, that's a lot of money that is not giving you a return that you're even aware of or using. So what would you say might be a first step to not working harder and being broke? I mean, if I was listening to this right now, you would say, start here.
I mean, the first start here would be, there's a couple different things. Is one, I would have one grade themselves with their relationship with money. And so an A or an A plus means I love my money. I spend time with money. I know where every dollar goes. I feel good about the way I spend it. I feel good about the way I save it. I can talk about it. I enjoy it. I enjoy making it. I enjoy saving it. I enjoy investing it. I enjoy all of it. So that would be an A plus. And, and I have maybe some assets. I feel like I'm on track. And F would be, I hate money. I'm terrified of money. I don't look at it. Maybe I'm great at making it or not making it. It's irrelevant. But, any dollar I make, I'm just hoping it's going to work out. And somewhere grade ourselves somewhere in between. And that's the first starting place, is just based on that grade. If it's less than like a B, then the first thing is kind of this awareness of, I think there's something I may need to learn or some time I want to spend here, because the C to DF probably is not going to work out for me, right? It's just not going to work out. So maybe that's some inspiration. The follow up to that then is something to do, is to really quantify how much it costs to live your life. How much does it cost? And know your number. And so that's really important, is know how much it costs to live your life. How much does it cost to live the life you want, if it's different than the life that what your life costs you now? And then the third thing is to really look at maybe 30 to 60 days of I'd say 60 days of expenses, of spending. I like to say the word spending, use it as a verb, because we spend the money, and look at where every has gone, and just look at it, and just look at it and be able to say, like, whoa, to your point, a lot of money has gone to these different places that I didn't even know about. And it's very rare when you don't go back 60, 90 days and look at this. If you've not been paying attention to your money and you look at this, that you don't have this big aha moment. And one of my favorite quotes in this exercise is called "Small leaks sink big ships." It's also the death of 1,000 cuts, or the straw that broke the camel's back, where we don't see all these little minor spendings that add up, to your point, over time, that ultimately is going to take us down, which means we're going to hit a financial crisis. We're going to hit a health crisis that turns us into a financial crisis, or we're going to reach this point where we're just really tired. We realize, like, man, I just don't have enough.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the things when you wrote your bestseller, Falling for Money, it's a romance novel with your bank account. So let's just, as a takeaway, as we wrap this up, you got to know what you're spending every month. And one of the best things I ever did, because I really never got into QuickBooks. I don't really like that, but I have somebody who does, and then she helps me, and she tells me, yeah, you need X amount of dollars to keep afloat. And that's hard costs. That's not like what I spend on makeup, which is exorbitant, but like mortgage and taxes and utilities and the kinds of things that keep you comfortable in your home or comfortable in however you live. Once you understand that, and then you look at like what your income had been for that month, you start getting an idea about, are you in a plus or a minus situation? So for more information, tell us a little bit about Sovereignty, so the Academy, so that if somebody said, this is about time I buckle up and start learning a little bit more about money, what would you tell them? Where to go?
Just real quick, I'll say where to go. The one of the fun things to do is that A great place to get started is read my book, and I give a free copy. So it's at fallingformoney.com, which is a really great place just to do a quick read. A lot of the stories I've told here today are in there, but really great exercises. Like you said, what are some first things I can do? In my book, it's a very easy read. Like you could read it in an afternoon if you wanted to, but those exercises are a really great starting place, along with some money wisdom in there. It's like, well, that would have been good to know 5 years ago, but I'm really glad to know I'm really glad to learn it right now. So that's at fallingformoney.com. And then sovereigntyacademy.com is my blogs and where I write. And you can set up an appointment to meet with me there if you want to. But I do want to say, just in closing on this note, uh, and what I teach are a lot of these, what I call wisedoms. My last name is Wise, but these financial wisedoms that really, the lessons is like the truth about money is almost on the exact opposite side of what we believe to be true. And that's what's crazy about this. And so, one of those things, for example, is we really determine our expenses based on how much income we make. And there's something called Parkinson's Law of Money. And Parkinson's Law of Money says expenses will always rise to match income. And what that means is when we make $50,000 out of college, we spend $50,000 on our lifestyle. Then, we get a raise or raises or do this. Now but in our mind, it's like, I'm only making $50,000, so I can't save, invest, do these different things. I'm not making enough money. So all of a sudden, 2 years later, you're making six figures, you're making 100. Now, what happens though, it's called expense creep, which is part of Parkinson's law. All of a sudden now you're upgrading the house, the rent, you're upgrading the cars, you're upgrading the dinners, you're upgrading everything, because now you're kind of in the social class of a six-figure earner versus the five-figure earner. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this $100,000, I thought it'd feel like a lot more money. I'm going to save and invest and do these different things when I make more money. And again, that's chasing more money. And then years later, you're in that same cycle. So what's happening is Parkinson's law is every time we get a pay raise, so do our lifestyle expenses. So they always equal. Expenses will always rise to match income. So what we want to do is we want to do the exact opposite. And this is another exercise one can do. And you can do this. This is in the book. We want to do the opposite, where expenses determine income. So we know how much money it costs, to your point, what I call the burn rate. So how much is your monthly burn, meaning those required expenses that if you don't pay them, there's consequence, right? They're going to take your car away, your house away, turn off your utility bills, you can't go through the grocery line, but really know, like on a monthly basis, what is that burn? Meaning no matter what, whether you make $1 or not, you have to cover those expenses. So that's called your burn, expense number one. Expense number two are what we call the luxury expenses. How much are you spending each month of non-required expenses? So subscriptions, Netflix, and eating out, and movies, and I don't know, DoorDash,
Yeah,
and
the kinds of things that just disappear. Yes.
those things that disappeared. So all those added things, how much, now put all those in that luxury category. Those are your choice expenses, but how much are you spending monthly on that? So now we have our burn rate, those living expenses. We have those luxury
Luxury.
expenses, the choices. Now, if you don't have any cash, cash is security. So we don't have any cash, we're living month to month. That's called financial stress. So you absolutely positively have to have some cash, some backup cash that's at the minimum 90 days, but usually 6 months of sitting there in a cash account. So how much money do you need to add on top now of that to make sure that you have a whole bucket full of cash that's your security fund, if you will, your cash fund? So now on top of that, it's our investment capital. Like, so if we're going to start buying assets, how much money do we need to invest probably on a monthly basis, save to invest for a monthly basis, so that now we can make sure we can invest. So we're adding on top, and then, you add those layers up, and that's the total amount of money we actually have to make sure we're covering all these categories. And let's just say that's $150,000 a year by the time we add all that up. Now that tells us how much money we need to be earning from our business profit wise after taxes is that 150. You can add taxes on top of that. So we're starting at the bottom and layering up versus saying, hey, this is how much money I make, and it gets eaten up by expenses. So again, these are just some really good exercises to know how much it costs to live your life And how much money do you actually need to make sure you're covering all these layers of the cake that's the full cake, including some really nice frosting.
Absolutely. So you can see why you need to tune in on a regular basis, because between Krisstina and I, we got plenty of ideas about how to live your life by design and not by default, which is so important because you make better decisions when you're not exhausted and cranky and broke. So thanks for joining us. For more information, as you mentioned, your blog, it's and Sovereignty Academy is just all you have to do. If you can spell sovereignty, which most of us can't, just go to sovereigntyacademy.com and get some more information there. And do get the copy of that book. I mean, that's an amazing book. For more information about Women's Wisdom Network, go to womenswisdomnetwork.com/smart. Some information there. Join us again for an upcoming segment. We've got a whole bunch of them coming up, a lot of them about living life with your power, whether it's money or your belief system or your motivation. Any closing comment there, Miss Krisstina?
No, I just want women to have more money conversations. Let's have this conversation, break it wide open, and have fun with it. Money's a fun topic when we can just throw it out there and start
Yeah,
dissecting it and tearing it apart.
yeah, because you know what was really enviable is not only health, but people that can live life large. And that's what we're here about. Thanks for joining us. I'm Terri Murphy and Krisstina Wise for Women Helping Women. Join us again.